Welcome back, friends, to the Real Dad Show. This is episode number 59. I'm your host, Rocco DeLeo. You can find the show notes and all the videos and all the good stuff on www.roccodeleo.com/59. Today we're going to talk about the masculine journey. The masculine journey. Are you ready for this, guys? Today's a very special episode. I think we're going to really be talking to the men out there, but I want the women to listen too, because it's important. I'm going to take some water here. It's important that we know what's going on with the guys. And, I've been doing some reading a lot lately. I'm always doing reading. It's kind of crazy. It's a problem. It's a real problem, friends. But I just picked up this book called Iron John by Robert Bly. Let's see if I get it in front of the camera. For those of you on the video, remember the video is roccodeleo.com/59. And we'll probably call this the masculine journey or something. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to call the title. I've decided I'm just going to kind of see how things go, and then we'll name it later. I want it to be as really relevant and pertinent to the content. And I want people to be able to cherry pick. As much as I want them to listen to every episode, I want them to listen to the episodes that really matter. And that's how I listen to podcasts. I look at the titles and go, hey, I want to listen to that. I don't want to listen to that. So I'm going to try to be more respectful. But today we're going to talk about the masculine journey, about what it means to be a guy. And, reading this book, Iron John by Robert Bly, makes me think about John Eldredge's book, Wild at Heart, which was written, I think, 10 or 15 years later after that. And they both talk about the same thing, this idea of the masculine journey, that us as men, that we have this question, that every man goes through this. What's it mean to be a guy? And do I measure up? So John Eldredge, in his book, Wild at Heart, he brings up this idea of this challenge, this thing that we do. And I'll get into my thesis. I'll get into the idea of where this comes from here in a moment. But this idea that as boys and as young men, we have this question of, do I measure up? What's it take to be a man? What's it going to take? And the problem that many men have is they take this question into their marriages or into their first real serious adult relationships. They take this masculine question to their women, and the women don't have it to answer. They don't have the masculinity. They don't know what it takes. Robert Bly asks the same question. He poses that as an issue, I guess, as a thesis. He even goes a step further and say, the women do the same thing. The women come into their relationships. What's it take to be a woman? What's it take? Do I have it? The women ask, do I have it? Do I measure up? Do I measure up as a woman? And they bring that to the marriage. And let me tell you, I don't know what it takes to be a woman, because I'm not a woman and I don't have it to give. So I want to read bits and pieces. I'm going to read most of the text. I'm probably not going to read the whole thing here, from an article I wrote a while ago that was heavily influenced by John Eldredge's book, Wild at Heart. I had not yet read Iron John, but I recommend the guys especially that you dig into this. I think I got it for less than $10 on Amazon. And it's an amazing book. This Iron John, as well as Wild at Heart. These are two must reads. And if you think, you know what, I'm secure as a man, or I've got this thing figured out, I feel like I'm in a pretty good place myself too. But I want to read this stuff because I have a boy. I'm raising a boy, and I have to look back, and I have a lot of pain in my past that I want answers to. Like, why did I go through that, or why did I do what I did? And a lot of this stuff answers that question. So I'm going to jump into this article that I wrote here just a minute, in just a moment. But I want to ask you a question. I want you to read this, and I want you to ask yourself a question. What is it that you want? Say, self. What is it that I want? What is it that I want out of life, out of being a man? What is it that I want? And that question's going to come up in a minute, and I'm going to try not to sneeze here, because I don't have a good sneeze button. So I have a cough button, but I don't have a sneeze button. I don't know how that works. So let's jump into this here. The world needs more men who have found their way through the masculine journey and discovered their individual authenticity. Men who know they have what it takes. These men make healthy fathers, husbands, and leaders. Just a quick look around and it's easy to see that there aren't enough of these men. From the workplace to church and every place in between, we see passive men who are afraid to rock the boat, to stand up for what's right, and refuse to be leaders in their families. Many of these men have lukewarm marriages, superficial relationships with their kids, and lack any real passion. They are bored and boring. From the proliferation of pornography, alcoholism, and the emptiness many men feel, this is an epidemic. Even worse, the key to transforming today's boys into men is having authentic men around to lead the way. And these men are shrinking in numbers. A healthy journey into manhood is key to an authentic self-awareness of our own manhood. The journey, friends, the journey is key. This has nothing to do with penis size, wallet size, or the breast size of your wife. It has everything to do with confidence, self-worth, and knowing that you measure up. That last piece is extremely important, that knowing that I measure up, knowing that I have what it takes. The journey starts as a child. Many old world societies had initiation rituals transforming boys into men. Some tribal boys didn't court their women until they killed a lion or survived a physically challenging experience. The personal growth and self-discovery from these experiences provided tremendous self-worth and validation to these boys. While killing lions is frowned upon and putting kids in physical danger is out of bounds in our safe society today, boys still need to know they measure up. A trophy for everyone and a no-loser policy may make them feel happy in the moment, but it doesn't tell them they measure up. Have you had something handed to you at work? Have you ever had something just given to you, a lucky break or maybe credit for some big closing deal or something that landed in your lap? The bonus check is great. But when your name comes up for the next challenge, do you feel like you're any more ready for that next real challenge? For instance, I know I can run a marathon, not just because I've trained for it or that other people that look like me have completed one. I know I can handle the 26.2 mile run because I've already done it. Healthy boys become men through initiation. Boys look to their fathers, uncles, grandfathers, and other men around for validation. Do I belong? Do I measure up? Do I have what it takes? Adventures like camping, fishing, river rafting, hunting, surfing, missionary work, or hundreds of other active activities that allow boys to walk arm in arm with older authentic men in their lives provides opportunities to transform. As a boy manages his way around a fishing rod and a boat, he discovers what he's made of. He learns two indispensable lessons. I can figure this out, and if I can't figure this out, I know how to find someone I could count on who can help me figure this out. Then I will be able to figure this out. Once a boy crosses this threshold, he's on an upward trajectory into his masculine journey. As the decisions become bigger than garlic worms or power bait, he will know where to go for advice, and the question of do I measure up will be answered by someone who knows what it means to measure up. When this idea came to me, I felt like I discovered gold for raising my boy. My problem, however, was many years ago, I didn't feel like I measured up. I began to look through my own masculine journey and uncovered my lack of self-discovery as a man. I didn't know if I had what it takes. At the time, and this was many years ago, I was asking my wife for validation. And this was disastrous. My wife had her femininity to offer me, and in a healthy marriage, this is an amazing gift that I think every man should embrace. She can tell me what the feminine heart seeks from a man, but she can't tell me that. She can't tell me what makes the masculine heart tick, what it means to be a man and face the challenges of life as a man. Only a man could do that. A man who's been there. I must seek masculine validation from someone who's been there. This is like asking an experienced coworker about delivering customer service versus asking the customer himself. These are both important questions, but they are different. I have a great dad. He's still here. He painted this office behind me just the other day. And I've always had good men around me. This didn't matter because I had a traumatic event that happened to me. A lot of people listening to this have a father wound. I don't have a father wound, but my traumatic event, my abuse as a child, sort of created this gap for me. So maybe I'm a little different, but I still felt like I was on the same trajectory. This didn't matter because I had a traumatic event that happened to me around age 6 that completely nullified the rest of my masculine journey until now, but this is a while ago. But the journey is fragile in the early stages. Until we build up deep reserves of understanding and male fellowship, our journey is very vulnerable. It's obvious that abuse, trauma, divorce, and parental deaths can cause damage to this journey, especially to a younger boy. Coddling parents, overprotective environments, and absentee fathers can cause similar damage. So we kind of get into that father wound type thing that we hear a lot. That a lot of men that I know have this. As I grew up, I sought validation, as any boy will. My first experience was with someone who told me through his actions of abuse that I didn't measure up. He hurt me. And I learned to stop seeking validation because it only led to pain. As I grew older, I couldn't shake the need to discover my true masculinity, to have the answer to the question, do I measure up? Many boys find themselves entering puberty on a downward trajectory away from authentic masculinity with no visible hope for their answer. They continue to seek validation from anywhere. Pornography, drugs, alcohol, workaholism, isolation, and women are quick fixes for validation, but they aren't enough to fill the need for true self-worth and self-respect. I saw validation first from pornography, and then later it was with women in my early days. I see a lot of men doing the same thing. Best-selling author John Eldredge writes in Wild at Heart that asking a woman to validate your manhood is akin to asking an oyster to give you a buffalo. It just doesn't work. She doesn't have it to give. She has only her femininity to give, and when given to a man who knows what he's made of, here's the question. Let me back up because I was kind of reading that fast. She has only her femininity to give. And when given to a man who knows what he's made of, that can create amazing things. In the hands of a boy, it leads to confusion, loneliness, insecurity, and emasculation. Many men discover the need to have their question of masculinity answered later in life. The learning curve is much steeper, but not impossible. The rules remain the same. The masculine journey starts with initiation at age 4 or at age 40 or at age 70 or whatever. This may come in the form of a midlife crisis. The objective is still self-discovery, minus the sports car and the affair, of course. Again, the cliched midlife crisis is the man blindly seeking validation. Just like the child, validation must come through the initiation experience with authentic men. This may be through service at church, missionary work, running a marathon, or a host of other active and ongoing activities that involve men who have been there before. That's important. The road is different for many men, but the common thread involves service, action, self-discovery, courage, passion, and for me, the love of God. It is through fellowship men gain these experiences that the question of do I measure up begins to be answered. As more men begin to see the hope of transformation, even later in life, our marriages will be more fruitful and lasting. Our boys will be stronger leaders, and the message of authentic masculinity begins to spread. More men will know how to have their own personal question answered. Friends, this comes in the wake of, this book I'm reading right now, Iron John here, is by Robert Bly. Definitely a book I recommend. It just kind of opened this up, like, wow, I feel like I've come through this on the other side, and I feel like I want to share this. And I don't have all the answers, friends. In fact, I don't have any answers. The answer comes from within, but first, a lot of times it's like noticing, oh, wait, there's a problem here. That you have a question you don't know the answer to. You don't even know you have the question. That could be the problem. And this makes me think of our society right now, and sometimes it's scary. Turn on Disney Channel or Nickelodeon or whatever. I've got kids that the kids that are watching these shows are 11, 13, or 11, 12, and how old is Hallie? She's 3. And these shows, they always depict the man as a bumbling idiot. He's just a fool, has no idea what's going on. He's completely unplugged. Very much like the passive man that Robert Bly talks about in Iron John. And this is the emasculated man. This is the man that just, he stays away. He stays away from any challenges. He stays away from any fight. He stays away from anything that causes any friction anywhere. And let's take a look here on page 64 of the paperback version. Where am I at here? I should have this marked, but I don't. So he talks about men of the old days, of the olden days, back in the day. Men were the hunters and the fighters and the protectors. He uses the wild boar as an example. That men would go out and hunt the wild boar, and the women would be home doing whatever the women did back then, cleaning or taking care of the children and maybe prepping the food or whatever it is in these old tribal societies. Well, he says nowadays that the wild boar has been replaced by, let's see if we can, now the boars have turned to pigs in the stockyard and the rushing rivers to the waterfall in the Museum of Modern Art courtyard. The activity men were once loved for is no longer required. So what we see in essence, and I hope I can articulate this the right way, but what we see in essence is men, compared to the way men were many years ago in tribal societies, men are getting more passive. And women are getting more active, if that makes sense. We see women taking a more active role in society, which I think is totally cool. It's totally awesome. But what we end up with is it's seeming like men are kind of falling back and letting women take over. And I don't think there's any women in the world that want, well, maybe there is, but most women do not want to take over the men's role. That we both play a very important and a very different role in our families and our society. But we end up with these passive men, and he goes on to challenge. And I agree a lot of what he's saying here, that society wants passive men. And he was talking, he wrote this book in 1990, and I sense there's a lot of influence from the 60s and 70s that the society wanted these passive men during the last 30 years. So this is 1960 to 1990, but I think it still holds true now. That men have been asked to learn how to go with the flow, how to follow rather than to lead, how to live in a non-hierarchical way, how to be vulnerable, how to adopt consensus decision-making. Some women want a passive man if they want a man at all. And I don't know where to go with that one here, but here's one. The church wants a tamed man, and he references priests. But now I grew up Catholic. And there were some priests that were very manly men, so I totally get that. But I get the cliche, and I get this goes back to the cliched, super soft and cuddly and flowery Jesus. But again, Jesus, Jesus was not just a super flowery guy. And again, my youth as a Catholic, I think of some of the saints, and I think of St. Francis of Assisi. And if you think of St. Francis, and if you don't know who he is, he's the one that always has the animals on him, and he's this calm, tame guy. This was a tough dude, but you don't read about this. This is a tough dude that wore horsehair shirts so he could feel pain, so he could be reminded of the struggles of Christ. This was a guy that lived in like medieval times or whatever. That there was no air conditioning. He was a rich guy who gave up his money for Christ, and he suffered a lot. But we were taught, or I was taught as a boy, that this is a soft kind of guy, and he talked to the birds, and just like Jesus was this flowery guy. There was a tough side. In fact, there was probably more of a toughness. And I think about Jesus, what a tough, the God, the human side of Jesus was challenged by the devil in the desert. A soft guy doesn't face that challenge and win. A tough guy, a manly guy who knows what he's made of, and he knows he can handle it. That's the kind of guy. But that's not what the church teaches. Not a lot of the churches, at least when I grew up. So there was that the whole sense of this, we want this tame man, and the university, and this is coming from Robert Bly, the university wants a domesticated man. They're called tenure track people, tenure track professors. Again, we get this passive man. We want people just to go with the flow. Listen, if you want people to go with the flow, you're going to end up with passive guys. And so guys, when you're hearing this, I'm not saying pick a fight with everybody, but you have to have some passion. You have to have something to fight for. You have to have something, some value, some solid ground to stand firm on. And it starts with your family, and to me, I feel it has to start with your relationship with Christ. that's where everything starts from, and that's where all your strength comes from. And we'll jump into some little slight technical difficulties here, but we are back, and I'm not going to edit that out because I don't want to. So the challenge of the passive man, he gets into this. So he talks about a study that was done. Again, I think this was done around 1990. That 3/4 or so of American marriages follow a curious scenario. The woman wants more intimacy, and the man flees from that. She runs after, but not quite fast enough to catch him, and he flees, but not quite fast enough to get away. It's this cat and mouse, or push and pull. And personally, I felt in some of my earlier relationships and earlier marriages, I guess, that I felt like I was on the other side of that. I don't know what that means, but I was always the one. I felt like I was always the one chasing, which is kind of exhausting in and of itself. But this whole idea of that person doesn't quite get away because they don't really want to get away, but they go far enough away to where you don't just go, okay, this is done, just enough to pull you. And the passive man just gets beat up by this. And he just says, you know what, I whatever you guys want, whatever you want, I'm just going to focus on work. And you end up with workaholic men. And this is where I want you to think. I'm going to lead up to this question here that I want you to ask yourself. And let's see if we can find the answer, because I'm going to share with you the answer I came up with. And it made a lot of sense to me. The passive man may not say what he wants, and his girlfriend or wife has to guess it. As a compensation for passivity at home, he may go into robot production at work, workaholism. But that isn't really what he wants either. So I wrote this note in here. I said, well, what does he want? Well, let me think. Let me go back. What did I want? And I really, I feel like I'm thinking of how I was after my first marriage. I made mistakes going into my second marriage, but I think it was a little different area. But a lot of this stuff does answer the question of some decisions I made going into my second marriage. So I asked this question: What do I want? What do I want? And it's very simple. I want to be a man. I don't want to be embarrassed for wanting manly things. I don't want to be embarrassed for wanting to have sex in the context of marriage. I don't want, like, hey, I'm sorry. No, I think it's okay that we want that stuff. That I think it's okay that I want a beard, that I want to burp and spit and go camping and get dirty and do that, just the guy stuff, and just to be a man. I think nowadays, I think of like as I said earlier, the Disney shows where the dad's the bumbling idiot, and it's like, oh, dad's going camping again, and everybody rolls their eyes and like, he's such a barbarian. There's nothing barbaric about camping or doing guy stuff. We need it. We see from the article I wrote that came from that really I took that mostly from Wild at Heart, that took that from tons of studies in empirical data. We know that if we don't have these things, these experiences with other men, we end up with these passive men. And I feel like now we may be seeing sort of the unintended consequences of taking out passion. And I'll argue this. Maybe I'm getting way off the topic here, but I'll argue that this goes back to removing God from our society. When we take God out of our society, we what are we going to fight for? What are we going to fight for? Now it's just, I'm man, you woman, you listen to me, you make me sandwich. No, because we're not allowed to use the Bible, right? The society doesn't talk about that. We don't see that in any of these TV shows that are influencing our kids, because that's just not right, because we're not allowed to have God in our society. And it's, guys, and I think most of the guys listening to the show are godly men. And if you're not, I challenge you to pick up a Bible and just start reading it. Go to it, take it one step at a time. Just talk to people. Don't just jump into it until you understand it, but ask questions. Go to a church, meet with a pastor. Hey, I'm hearing all this stuff about the church and about Jesus and the Bible. And just, where do I start? You could send me a message. Send me a message on Facebook or email me, roccodelio@roccodelio.com. I'd love to talk to you. I'm not an expert. I'm not a therapist. I'm just some dude who's just talking into a microphone and staring at himself on the computer screen right now. But I just feel so passionate about this, that we need to be okay being men, being okay doing guy things. So that was my question. The question that I answered is, am I okay being a guy? Am I okay doing guy things? And do I feel like I'm going to do it, but I have to apologize. And I'm not going to apologize because I know what my values are. And I know I'm reading the Bible, and I know I'm going to church, and I know what a good Christ-following man is made of and what he can and cannot do. And I know I'm walking that line. So I don't have anything to apologize for. And I know I could show up. And I know when someone says, hey, we need to do this or we need to do that, I know that when I ask myself, hey, do I measure up? I certainly know that I measure up. That I can fight the fight. And if there's something I don't know how to do, like maybe fix a dishwasher, I know where to find someone to help me. And I'll figure out how to do it myself. And we need to do this for our boys. Let's get this cool outro music here. There we go. Because that's what this is all about. Maybe this is sort of a little more ranty. I don't think I've made that many funnies either in this thing, but I don't know. I just feel so passionate about this. I'd love to hear some feedback from you. I'd love to hear maybe some non-believers challenge me on this, because again, let's turn this down a little bit. I don't know where I'd go without having that. And that was the biggest thing that pushed me over the edge, was I don't have to apologize for wanting to be a guy, for wanting to do the cliched guy things that the Disney Channel tells me is just stupid guy stuff. Because the Disney Channel or the world doesn't tell me where I should be, doesn't give me a barometer of what's right or wrong. My values are based in the Bible and in Christ. And I know I know the real Jesus. And the real Jesus was a man who was a carpenter, who was tough, who could handle more than any of us could ever even imagine handling, including being nailed to a cross and still having forgiveness and love in his heart. And at the end of the day, that's what we want. We want to be. We want to be just like Jesus. We don't want to know Jesus. We want to be Jesus. And when we're immersed in those values, we don't have to apologize for doing those things that we know we want to do, and we know it's okay. And then we can be there for our boys, and we can initiate them. We can show them, whether it's fishing, whether it's boating, whether it's art, whether it's running, whether it's hiking, or any other thing, gardening. You know you're there, and you know you can show your boys what it takes to measure up, and they'll be able to answer that question. They'll say, yes, I measure up. God bless, brothers. Until next time, peace out.